to Where Are They Now? We reach into the archives of Lenape, Shawnee, Cherokee, and Seneca High Schools and invite selected alumni to share memories and fill us in on their career paths after commencement. Since Lenape's first graduating class in 1961, Shawnee's in 1972, Cherokee's in 1978, and Seneca's in 2005, over 65,000 individuals have received diplomas from these four schools. Here now is your host, DJ Deeney.
Welcome to another episode of Where Are They Now? Today we will be reconnecting with an alum from Cherokee's class of 1978, Brian Gutherman. Brian is an engineering consultant who lives in Chemung, New Jersey. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, Cherokee, the late 70s, 1978. Tell me a little bit about what was, going on in your life and high school life in that year.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Marlton, went to all the Evesham schools, and at that time, all the Marlton students were going to Lenape. My older sisters and brother went to Lenape, and I actually went to Lenape my first year and then transferred to Cherokee. So there was a lot of change going on at the time, both with myself and with society in general in the 70s, with the Vietnam War, for example, ended in 1975.
So was that a difficult, we talked to some people that went to Seneca later on and when Shawnee opened, was that difficult for you or was it easy because it was only 1 year that you had to change after?
It was easy. The district handled it really, really well. They prepared us well, and we moved from a large campus type school at Lenape to Cherokee, which was a little more intimate in its design, and it was easy to get around because we all knew each other from growing up in the Evesham school district.
What was it like being in a brand new school, especially freshly opened like that?
We liked it very much. In fact, coming out of a small middle school, we came to Lenape the first year, and this was a gigantic campus for us, 13 years old or 14 years old. But again, Cherokee being such a well-designed, intimate school with the round building and then the parabolic building around that, it was really nice to get to go to a brand new school, everything brand new, clean, and new set of teachers, fresh start. We enjoyed it very much.
Now, you had some impact from people that were at Lenape, though, when you were there. One of the teachers you mentioned, Mr. Earl. We'll talk about him while we're still talking about Lenape.
Okay.
What do you remember about him?
I remember Jack Earl was my algebra teacher, a fantastic teacher, very good at teaching the material and making you understand it, not just take the tests and pass. And I consider Jack just the first step of all my mathematics teachers helping me to get where I am today.
So you had him freshman year at Lenape, and then you move on to Cherokee. And some of the teachers that you had at Cherokee that you remembered, talk about Miss Williams. Let's talk about Miss Williams.
Miss Williams, again, they all fit sort of the same mold in as much as they taught this information that I found fascinating, and I knew it was going to be important to me after I graduated. So I think that was really important for me doing well in those classes. They were just great teachers.
Mr. Ludman.
Mr. Ludman was not only my Algebra 2 teacher, he was also my baseball coach. I played JV baseball for a couple of years. Enjoyed Mr. Ludman very much in the same way. The math teachers, it must have been something about the curriculum and the supervision of all the math teachers because they were consistent in the way they delivered the material and it was easy to learn.
Okay, and Miss High.
Miss High was my pre-calculus teacher, senior year.
Noticing a theme here.
Yeah. My focus was on mathematics and science, that's for sure. But again, she taught me pre-calculus, which is essential for being an engineer, and did well in that class too. Liked her very much.
So going to this theme, did you know from freshman year what you wanted to do?
I did. In fact, in my 8th grade yearbook, it'll say I wanted to be an engineer. And largely that was due to my brother was an engineer, and he went to Drexel. And so that's what I wanted to be. And I felt like I had a natural aptitude for math and science. So it was a natural progression to my education.
Well, it's funny you mentioned your yearbook from 8th grade because we have your yearbook from high school here, your senior year, and memories that you had. It was senior year was trying to get out of the gym parking lot at 12:09 without getting killed.
Yeah, at that time, if you were doing well enough in school and you were a senior, you could be done at noon. And everybody, of course, was driving. Not everybody, but most folks were driving and not driving that long. And we wanted to get out of school, and it was a real demolition derby if we didn't watch ourselves. Yeah.
And I guess your goal in here was to go to college and then get rich.
Yeah,
I think that was a pretty common
goal
for most of the people at that time.
Stupid 17-year-old statement, yeah.
We're all trying to get there, I think.
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to go to college and continue my education and do something after that, yeah.
And some of the activities that you did, obviously you mentioned baseball, varsity club, National Honor Society, boys state. Any memories of those things?
Well, I played soccer for 3 years,
Okay, soccer as
and
well.
it was actually difficult because Marlton didn't have a rec soccer program at the time, so we were all new to soccer as sophomores, and we took our lumps for 3 years, and I think we had 1 year over one win in 3 years, and that win was very very gratifying. But I enjoyed all of it. I liked baseball and soccer was all great time.
And you mentioned meeting your best friend when you were at Cherokee.
Yeah, my best friend to this day. We met in Cherokee our sophomore year. He went through the parochial schools in Evesham Township and went freshman year to Bishop Eustace. And then he lived right across the street from Cherokee, so sophomore year he decided to transfer there, and we've been friends ever since.
So you obviously mentioned knowing what you wanted to do when you were in high school. So your classes were geared toward that, and some of your interests outside of class were also geared toward that. You decided to go to Rutgers in Camden. What went into that decision? How did you end up there?
Well, we applied there with a lot of great help from our guidance counselor. I say we. The reason I say we is that in the freshman class at Rutgers Camden that year, they gave out 5 university scholarships, 2 of which went to Cherokee grads.
Okay.
I received one and my friend received the other. So really guided there through my guidance counselor at Cherokee at the time.
Now, so after high school, we get into college. You spend 1 year, or 2 years, I'm sorry, at Rutgers Camden, and then you transfer to the big campus in New Brunswick.
Right. Rutgers Camden at the time didn't offer an engineering degree, so I had to transfer. I took all of my my preliminary courses at Rutgers Camden, which was actually very beneficial because the class sizes were very small, intimate, a lot more teacher-student interaction personally. And then went up to the big campus and finished my last 2 years there.
You graduate in '82?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, and Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering.
Right.
All right, so what were your plans with that degree? What did you think you were going to be doing when you got out? Or
Well,
did you already have something ready to go when you got out?
I didn't know what an engineer did, to be quite honest. I knew how to get through the schoolwork, but it wasn't quite clear to me what they did day to day. I knew the kinds of things I liked and didn't like as far as how you applied engineering. So at the time, engineers were in high demand. So there were a lot of companies that were coming to school with job fairs and doing interviews on the spot, flying me actually to various places in the country. And I had 5 job offers by the time I graduated.
Oh, wow. So,
yeah.
so you had something lined up either
Right.
way, regardless of what you decided.
Precisely. Yeah, I happened to choose a company called Stone & Webster. It was a big architect engineering firm in Cherry Hill at the time. So I was able to stay at home for a little while and work there.
So how long were you there?
I was there 4 years.
And what went along with that job? What did you find out an engineer did? at
Well,
that job?
I found out that you don't do anything using your books that you used in college because anything outside of research has pretty much been done before. So you use other people, and there's a lot of codes and standards that you use to design things these days rather than using the fundamentals in a book.
So from after that job ended, how did you end up moving to another company?
Well, at the time, I moved to Stone & Webster, and I ended up working for them in the area of nuclear power plant design and construction. And in the early 80s, there weren't very many plants being designed and constructed anymore. It was right after 3 Mile Island.
Right.
And fewer and fewer plants being constructed, so there was less and less work available at Stone & Webster. So at the time, I chose to go to Florida to work at a nuclear power plant that was already in operation. So that's what I did.
So how long were you in Florida?
I was in Florida 12 years.
Okay, so going back a little bit, did you meet your wife before you went to your first job? Did you meet her in college? And
I met my wife at my first job.
okay,
Yeah.
so then you guys got married shortly after?
Right.
All right, so you went to Florida together. You
Right.
moved
About
down
a
to
year
Florida
after
together.
we were married, we moved to Florida. We had our children down there. Yes.
Okay, so you were down there for 12 years. Tell us about the experience in Florida.
We moved to Clearwater, Florida, and being a big Phillies fan, that was an attraction in and of itself. We loved living in Florida there. For 9 of those years, we lived in Clearwater and worked in St. Petersburg. The company moved my division to a place in northern Florida, northwest Florida on the coast, where the plant was located. So we moved up there, built a house, and stayed there for 3 more years, and then just decided it wasn't for us. So we moved back to New Jersey, another job change.
Okay, so what year was that?
That was 1998, we moved back.
Okay,
to New
and
Jersey,
who
yeah.
was that job with?
That was with a company in Marlton called Holtec.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
And
still there.
And what did you do there?
I was a licensing manager for their product line. The product line that Holtec makes requires a government license. So I would be the one that had the responsibility for interacting with the government officials who were reviewing the information we would send to them, asking for their approval.
So how different was this job now that, not that you're currently in, but the one you're talking about now, from the job you had in Florida and yet from the job you had first in New Jersey? Like how, they seem like they're very, very different types of things.
They
like
are.
at the same area.
They're different, yet it's a natural progression as I look back on it, because in the beginning I'm a young engineer working for an older engineer who's designing a plant and building a plant that's all basically on paper.
Right.
Then I worked at a plant that was in operation, real things, tangible things, pumps and valves and so forth. And then I went from there to a subspecialty of what the plants need to continue their operation. Went to a place that built equipment and sold it to the plants that operated.
So that was when you're coming back to New Jersey? That
Correct.
Was, okay.
Correct.
So you're kind of building off of each skill set or whatever, fine-tuning each thing and applying them as you go on.
That's right.
So how long were you at that company?
I was there 6 years.
6 years. Okay. So then how did that end? Why did you move on from there?
Well, I felt like there was an opportunity for me with a niche experience from there and my prior experience that I could add value as an independent consultant to a variety of customers and do better as my own business.
So, and at that time, moving back from Florida to New Jersey, you said you mentioned you had both your children while you were in Florida. How did all these moves go for uprooting the family? Was it a difficult thing, or was it?
My wife, first of all, was always very gracious and willing to move, willing to go into a new adventure, be it moving to Florida and moving back, and I can't say enough about how helpful that is. My children, our children, it was important, I think, to both of us that if we were going to move, we moved before they got too far along in their education, established more mature friendships.
Right.
So we moved when the kids were still very young in grade school.
Before they could even really remember and miss the people that they were.
Kindergarten and third grade, I think they were, respectively.
Okay, so then we finish up at the last job, and then we finally go to where you are now?
Right.
Okay, so let's talk most about that. Where are you now, and what does that position involve?
I work, I'm an independent consultant. I work out of my home.
Okay.
And I provide services to the nuclear energy industry, a variety of all the utilities, for example, around the country who have nuclear power plants. My specialty is in the management of spent nuclear fuel. So after the fuel is used in the reactor, it has to be managed and maintained and kept safe. And what I do is help them manage that process.
Does it involve disposal as well, or just managing?
It's interesting you say that. The reason I actually even have a going concern as a business is because the government was supposed to take the fuel and dispose of it, and they haven't done so. So as you can imagine,
That's a good thing for you.
Yes, it
Okay.
really is. The fuel is sorting. It comes out of the reactor and goes into a pool because
Right.
it's hot.
Right.
And after a period of time, it cools off, and then it can be put in these dry storage casks. So I help the companies move the fuel from the wet storage to the dry storage, and it's just accumulating on the sites until the government does what they're supposed to do.
I hate to simplify it because I know it's way more important than that, but I guess it sounds to me like almost like when you cook bacon. You take the bacon grease and you got to let it, before you throw it out, you got to let it cool and like almost harden. You can't stick that hot nuclear bacon grease.
I'll have to remember that.
It's very, very dumbed
That's
down.
a very apt analogy.
So that's kind of
everything
what you're doing is you're giving them that avenue until it's disposed of then, and helping them manage that until the
That's
government.
right, because if you cannot keep the waste moving, the plant can't operate anymore. And nuclear power plants supply 20% of our electricity, so that would be a big chunk of electricity we couldn't use anymore. So it's very important.
So this task that you're doing now, did you find that that's yet another time that it's building off the other things that you were doing?
Exactly. In fact, the consultation that I provide is to use the products that we were building at the prior job. So yeah.
All right. So it's building, and we get to a point where like do you see, obviously you're happy with what you're doing, you're working from home and all that. Do you see like another progression from here, or is this like pretty much where it would be most logically where you would see it?
That's a very good question that I don't have a good answer for right now. I'm 54,
right?
So I've got at least 15 more years, or 10 more years or so to work. I really like what I do a whole lot right now. I've got a diversity of customers. My time is my own, and it would be awful hard to find something that would be as comfortable as what I do now.
So this is kind of like the most enjoyable / like beneficial and total package of all the things that you've done accumulated to this one?
Yeah, it really, I'm in a very good place professionally right now, and it would have to be an awful good offer to do anything else.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about, I know it's like very complicated field, but as far as the actual process of this, there's a lot of misconceptions out in the public about nuclear energy and just nuclear waste. Like we even said, you know, my naive thought about, you know, oh, do we throw it away? Like, what is your thought on that, and going along with some of those ideas that might be out there in the public about what you do?
It can be a complicated technology, and after 3 Mile Island, and then events like Chernobyl and Fukushima, we have a lot to explain. We really do. The good news is those types of events are very few and far between, and on the whole, it's one of the safest industrial applications out there. It takes a lot of experience, a lot of training to do this right, but we just have to have the public trust us because we know what we're doing. We've been doing it a long time. And yes, it can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, but we do. And that's what we're, as professionals, we're tasked with doing. Health and safety of the public is the first priority.
Great. So tell me something about your accomplishments post-high school and post-college, besides the, you know, the professional, the job. You know, obviously some things that you've been awarded, or
I don't know that there's any significant awards. I can tell you one of the most gratifying things that I did was earn a senior reactor operator certification when I was at the power plant. I did not earn a license, which the government would grant and allow you to actually operate the plants, because the company just didn't want me to do that. It's an extra expense. But they did put me through the entire training course, which involved 6 months of classroom training and another couple months of training on a simulator. And what I learned there was just invaluable in my career thereafter.
You mentioned being a member of the Engineering Honor Society, and a 25-year member of the American Nuclear Society, and you said you had the certification for the Senior Nuclear Reactor certification. I don't know if this is a question that, it's something I'm curious about, so maybe there's some people curious about it. Do you ever yourself get a little worried? Because, you know, we think we know some things about just in general, but then down the line, years down the line, we go, oh yeah, well, we never knew that that would cause this, or whatever it is. Do you ever get worried or concerned that there might be some things that, even though we think we know, we don't really know?
I wouldn't call it worry. It's in the engineering world, there is no zero risk of anything. There's always the potential that something's going to happen. You try to design for it. As an example, these plants are built for earthquakes of a certain magnitude that are likely in that area every 1,000 years, for example. So you design to that, and then you add a little design margin on top of that. We're always learning all the time, every day, things happen. But what we try to do is design so that the unexpected won't cause a major problem.
Now, how about for just exposure for yourself? Do you ever get concerned that you're that much closer than like the average person is to that type of exposure?
Well, I haven't been since I worked at the power plants. But it's about education and understanding how radiation works, how much of a dose is harmful, and how much is not. And you can get quite a bit, and it's not even going to have an effect at all. And there's a lot of beneficial uses of radiation, of course, with CAT scans and treatment for cancers and so forth. So it's all about understanding how it works and protecting yourself.
All right, well, we've talked a lot of shop, and it's all very interesting stuff, but let's get into some of the more fun aspects of your life as far as your family and some of your interests. We talked about your family a little bit. You met your wife, and you said before you moved to Florida. Tell me a little about your wife, and tell me about your children.
My wife Cheryl and I met in 1983, and we were married in 1985, so we're coming up on 30 years married.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we've had a very good relationship for 30 years. It's been a lot of fun. The best thing is we've both got a similar sense of humor. We enjoy the same comedians, the same types of movies, and if you can laugh, you're well on your way to having a great relationship lasting a long time. We had our first child, Sarah, in 1990. She'll be 25 in May. She lives in Connecticut now and is working in New York. My son, Tyler, both Sarah and Tyler, by the way, went to Seneca. And Tyler is at the Berklee College of Music now. And it was a very good fit for him. And we're very happy. Our life is good, and we're very grateful every day.
So out of the four of you, your wife is the only one that didn't graduate from the district, correct?
Right. She went to Triton High School.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have a very large Lenape District I guess, presence in your extended family and your immediate family, but
Right.
she's the one that didn't.
Yeah.
What does she do for a living?
Right now she's a homemaker. She worked for my company for a while, and now she volunteers her time a lot with an outfit called St. Vincent de Paul. She works with them and helps people that are in need of whatever they might need to make their way through life.
Gotcha. All right, so you mentioned comedians briefly and some of the things you like to do. What are some of the social aspects of your life and with your family?
Well, I like to start with, when I was a kid in the 70s, a lot of my peers were listening to music. Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and Rolling Stones were all big at that time. Well, I was more into listening to comedy albums. So I was just listening to them and laughing and developing my own sense of humor. So that's where it all started, and she and I like to do that now with as far as movies and entertainment. I may have lost the question, I'm sorry.
No, we were just talking about what you like to do with
Okay.
your family. And so comedy is obviously going to entertainment shows.
Right.
So I guess it's a kind of a luxury where you live that Atlantic City's so close, you get to see a lot of shows. And, what are some of the things that, that you've done over the years that have been
Well, we've been
memorable?
lucky enough to be able to travel. I mean, we do like the beach. We go to the Jersey Shore when we can, but we've been lucky enough to be able to go elsewhere in the United States. National parks, Yosemite has been great. Went to Las Vegas. We spent our 25th anniversary on a cruise in the Mediterranean and loved that very much. I'd never been to Europe before, and that was just fantastic. So travel's a big thing for us now that the kids are going to be out of school, and we can look to do those things. Our time's more available.
Yes. And you mentioned in the pre-interview that you had some life-changing moments, like some really times of self-reflection. You want to talk about those?
Well, yeah. My family has been blessed with good health for all of my siblings. My parents in their mid-80s, and they're still doing quite well. And my wife had a little scare in 2012 with a cancer, and we went through that for the first time. I mean, it was completely new to me what you had to go through to diagnose it properly, to set down the course of treatment, and then go through that course of treatment. And if you didn't have perspective, which I think that we did, but if you didn't, you going through that.
It'd be very overwhelming if you don't.
It is.
Yeah.
And you see that there's a lot of people that have some very serious things going on in their life, and you get back to your own home and back into your environment outside of that, and you realize that there's a lot of little things we complain about in life that we really shouldn't.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that is most helpful as far as perspective goes is you generally see people that have things going a lot better at that time, but then you could turn your head and see someone that's having it going a lot worse at that same exact time. So it's all about, I guess, realizing that you could be on either side, but you need to keep that in perspective.
Be grateful for what you have. Don't be envious of others. Just do the best you can and improve your life. Take care of your loved ones, and there's not much else that you can do that you can control.
And well, you also mentioned in I believe 2004, you losing your job as a defining moment, also like self-reflection.
Right.
Why was that a pivotal time?
Well, it really brought me back down to earth in 2004. I was a senior manager in a company, and I won't go into the details of the circumstances, but I was separated from my job. And I didn't know what I was going to do because I was at home. I wasn't looking for a job because I wasn't expecting to lose my job. And it was gratifying that the phone began to ring. I started my business because customers called me and said, "Hey, I hear you're available. Can you go do this work on your own?"
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, that was an easy answer. And then I'm very grateful for those folks who thought enough of me to give me a call, and then it just grew from there over the years.
So things basically that could seem like a negative end up working out for the better, but at the time you don't expect it to.
You just can't panic. You need to just take a breath, realize where you are, have confidence in your abilities, and then put a plan together and go work that plan.
So I think I usually ask this at the end of the show, but we've kind of been going around it already. If you had to give some advice to people who are currently in school, or maybe something that you took away from the district that would be helpful to somebody that is currently in the district, is there any other thing that we haven't mentioned, because we're giving a lot of these life lessons now, but is there anything else that you would offer?
To students?
Yeah.
Understand that your teachers have your best interests at heart, and they're not trying to pin you down or do anything in a negative sense. They want you to be successful. So whatever they're doing, realize that. And you don't have the wisdom as a 17-year-old that a teacher does at a 20, 30 years your senior. So realize that with the things they're doing are based on their wisdom that they've gotten from their life experience, and they're trying to be helpful and want you to be successful.
Yeah, it's easy to lose track of that sometimes, especially when you're like in the grind, I guess, of high school.
Precisely, yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. Thank you very much for
You're
joining
welcome.
us on the show.
Glad to be here.
We've been speaking with Brian Gutherman, a Cherokee alum from the class of 1978. Brian is an engineering consultant who lives in Chemung, New Jersey. Thank you for joining us, and please join us next time for more alumni interviews on Where Are They Now?